Hey there, mamas. So we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. Um, I haven't filmed for a few days because of the snow. I've been doing snow stuff with my family, so I did decide to improvise some snow pants because one thing that we don't have, since we don't get very much snow here, is snow clothes that currently fit my kids. And my kids are both pretty big now. My daughter is probably a women's size small. My son is a men's size medium to large, depending on the cut. And the last time we needed snow clothes, they were both in kids' sizes. So I decided to make some snow pants out of old pull that we had from diaper sewing because I have a few like almost full bolts still. So I used first made a pair for myself and making sure they work because I don't have any snow pants either. And I used a pair of slacks that I already had that have a nice straight leg loose fit that I knew would fit well over like a fleece shell or fleece pants or leggings or something like that. And what you do to make sort of a rough pattern out of pants, this isn't a fitted pant, right? This is a bulky, puffy pair of snow pants, is you take a pair of pants that is loose and you like the fit of, and if it's something that you need it to be looser, you just add extra for seam allowance. And you turn it inside out, and then I laid it over a piece of butcher paper, and you put the fly forward, and you take one of the leg seams, and you go right along that seam on the inside, and you lay it over your butcher paper or opened up kitchen bags or whatever you want to use to trace to make your paper pattern out of. And you go up the seam, and you trace that line to get the right curve through the thighs and through the butt, and you get the right length. I made mine quite long because I know my daughter's going to be a lot taller than me, and I figure she can wear them next year or the year after. And so I added another 3 inches to the length of mine. But if it's for somebody who isn't going to grow anymore, then you can just add an inch just for the hem at the base. And you're just going to trace it onto your butcher paper or onto whatever paper you have to trace onto, or onto your fabric directly if you'd like to. And give a little bit extra for seam allowance, and if you want it to be baggier, a little bit extra more. And since I was making them not a fitted pants pattern, I didn't worry about the hip curve. I just did a straight line, and then that's my folding line. And then on the other side, you go to the butt, which is a different curve than the front. And you just take the back, and you do that same curve. You flip it over the other way, and you find your middle seam, your fold line, and you trace that down the other side. So you can totally copy the fit of whatever pants you wanted to copy the fit of, right? Just by tracing what curve they have through their butt, through their thighs, down the leg, and then put a little extra for sewing and a little extra for your hem at the bottom. Now I went all the way to the top, and then I added an extra waistband in addition to that. And I will show you what I came up with for my own pair. And this was all just improvised, so it didn't have to be perfect. I just wanted to make sure it worked. So this is the pair that I made just a couple days ago. And so tracing the pants that I had was this piece below this seam right here. And then I did a Velcro fly, and I'm going to do the fly first, so I'll show you how to do that. It's much simpler than like a zipper or a button fly. It's just, folded over, 2 layers at this one point, and then sewing Velcro on. And my husband is who suggested the Velcro fly because he's from somewhere where it actually snows, and he says that they used Velcro for their snow shells. And then for the waistband, I had these great angled pieces left over from cutting the legs. And I just used that to make that cute, sort of angled back butt area. But I still did an elasticized waist above that so that it pulls in so you don't get snow down the back of your pants. So even though I used a fitted pants pattern with a fly, I still did some elastic at the waist, and it has a little bit higher of a waist than the pants that I copied. This is about 3 inches here. So at the back, it's about 3 inches higher, and at the front, it's about 1.5 inches higher. And then I just did sort of a tacked, basted kind of stitch around the ankle because I know that my daughter's going to wear these in a year or so, and she'll be taller than me, so I wanted to make sure that I left enough fabric. But I'll turn this inside out so you get a better idea of what we're going to be sewing. And then I added Velcro to sort of hold it in place so I get a really nice fit. It actually looked really good. I was pretty impressed. So this was, for me, because I'm pretty short, I only needed just a tiny bit more than a yard of pull. If you're shorter than 5'5", you probably only need an even yard, because the waistband and stuff is made out of the side cuts and doesn't have to be stretchy. So you really get that extra few inches just out of the width. And then the pull that I'm using for today is the one that I'm going to sew today. It is a narrower width per yard, and so it's a little different, but not too different. And so this is what it looks like inside out. There's just the little elasticized waist, and this one part that's doubled, and then the little Velcro fly, and then the part where it looks, you know, the cut that I traced from those pair of pants that I showed earlier, just like this. And then I did a really big fold at the bottom so that they'll fit my daughter for longer. And this was just the Babyville pull that happened to be a misprice on Amazon, where they charged the price per yard for the entire bolt. So several of us sort of jumped on that. You know, it was a good deal. So I still had a few yards of that. I think I bought 2 bolts at the time. But it's, you know, I don't care about wearing little flowers or little birds. It's a little too girly for my son, but I have some other pull that I could use for his. So that's sort of the base. Hi, Melissa. I'm just talking about what I did. I did this about 2 days ago, and so now I'm going to do one for the camera because I need to make another pair anyway. I figure, you know, improvising snow pants is useful this time of year in a lot of the country where we don't usually get snow. Let's put those aside. And then since I made them more like a shell because it's not really very cold here, and also you can use them as rain pants too, or like hiking in the mud kind of pants. So I made myself then, using the same style, but I did a elasticized microfleece waistband, and then I did the cuffs like I did on the fleece longies for the diaper covers. I just did them in adult size. And this was the same situation. I only had exactly a yard of this sort of salmon colored fleece. And so then I added the length I needed with the microfleece cuff and with the waistband. And this is really simple. This is just a pair of, you know, like pajama pant style fleece pants that you can pull up as a warm undercoat for those pants. So to wear in the snow, you could wear them over fleece, but to wear it when it's not cold, you can just wear them as a shell. And my son's got sweatpants, so I don't need to make a pair of fleece for him. But what I've got here, cut for him, are all the pieces. And since his pull was not as wide as the little bird's pull, I had to do things a little bit differently, but not too much. So first, we've got the cut here, and I'll unclip it so that you can see. I was just going to sew this on my own time, but then I figured, why not show it on stream? It's useful. Other people might need to make rain or snow pants. They're just baggy pants, right? Exactly. That's why I decided to do it, because, you know, we got snow and we don't usually get snow. So plus we're kind of snowed in. Like, we can't really get out right now. We live on a steep hill and it's just like slush and ice. So luckily we had plenty in the freezer and the cupboards. But what else are you going to do? So this is what the cut looks like. It's just like the Katrina Longies cut, but for adults, right? It's the same thing. It doesn't have all the detailed curves that a fitted pants or jeans pattern would have. So it doesn't have that seam down the hip. It only has the one seam in between the legs, you know, down the middle. And that's great because, you know, less places for water to get in. And then you just line up the legs. And the way that you assemble these is just like assembling the baby longies. And you just face to face, serge up or sew up each of the inner legs. I would definitely recommend, you know, doing an extra inch outside whatever pants you trace, just because they're snow pants and you want them to be able to fit over sweatpants. You want them to be really roomy and be easy to move in. Since I used a striped print here, I have to go be more careful and line up my stripes. But if you were doing it with a print that didn't have that, you wouldn't have to be as careful. I don't want it to look silly and have the stripes not line up, right? So I was a little more careful with his than I was with mine. I don't think I even bothered clipping mine, honestly. And just line up your stripes. as I drop my clips. And then for his, since I didn't have as much width and I needed to use more of the fabric, it was a cut into piece of fabric. It wasn't exactly, straight all the way up. I used my little extra bits, so I couldn't fold over the fly the same way. So for the waistband, I've got the sort of triangle pieces that were cut off down the legs. And this is the longer one that wraps over the front. And then this is the shorter one that just goes from the mid of the back to the fly. And I did that so that then you could fold it over and you'd have that extra piece, and then that's like your wraparound Velcro piece to get just a better fit and not just a fly. It kind of wraps a little to the hip. Also, then it'll fit for a little longer because the fly doesn't have to be exactly lined up. You could make a wider fly and with thicker Velcro and have it fit for a bigger range of time. And then with the elastic, it also helps to get a better cinch. So those are the two pieces that are going to become the waistband. And I think I didn't measure them. It was just what I had left. But I think it's about, his is smaller than mine was. It's probably 2.5 inches at the back, and it'll be about an inch or 1.25 inches at the front. Still enough to fit my 1-inch elastic inside. So that's really all that matters. And I just measured it to be, one of them is the full length of that right there, side to side. And the other one is that plus a few inches. And then for the fly, I didn't have the extra fabric for this one. So I have this extra piece here. And it's not really going to show, so it doesn't matter that there's going to be a seam. But for the fly, you just kind of, how long do you want it to be, right? It would be at the front, not the back, so I'll flip this over. And you can just cut, whatever it's going to be folded over. So if you want it to be like inch thick Velcro, you could do it like 1.5 inches. If you want it to be, 1.5 inch thick Velcro, you could do it 2 inches. And then that's just going to be sewn to this. We're going to go faces to faces. And then fold one over and then sew it down. And that'll be the back side. And you could serge the edges or not. It's not going to run. It's pull, so it doesn't matter. And then for the other piece, I used the fly on the one that I was tracing. For his, it was a pair of his pants, right? So it's longer than the fly on mine. I guess boys' flies are longer. Who knew? And it's a different curve at the crotch too, obviously. And then for this one, I'm just going to take that same thing. I'm going to do the same thing on that. Make sure that it's a little longer than that fold point, and then turn that around the back and then sew it down, just like I did on the other one. So this is just a scrap to be used for that. It's not anything precise. I'd probably just take it and cut it down the middle here. It's not going to show. It'll be on the inside, so it's just a backing. So it's a little thicker there. So this is all really rough. I'm not measuring anything. This is totally, just so that it fits on there. And I'd probably put it that way. Yeah. And then you can clip that down if you want, or you could just wait and do it after you do the two thighs together. You can sew that down in any order. I guess I could probably do it now since my sewing machine's already out. I'll do this first. And since this is a much stickier pull than the pull that I was using on my other one, I'm going to go really slow. I don't want it to pull and flex too much. You could also use something other than pull since it's just a backing. If you have any Alova or anything that's not super stretchy but also not absorbent, that would be a great backing for this. I wish I had some white Alova, but I don't have any. I would totally use something like that as a liner. It would be awesome. But, you know, more diapering fabrics. Anything that's non-absorbent is great for, you know, snow or rain gear. Set this aside. We'll do that one second. Yeah, I started making these pants like when my kids were really little. The first time that we needed snow pants, I think, gosh, they were like 3 and 5 or 2 and 4 or something like that. And we just suddenly needed snow pants. We wanted to go to the snow. We were going to drive up in the mountains and we didn't have anything that fit them. And I had some just basic solids of pull, and I made them like a size like, you know, 3T and 6 or something, whatever they were at the time. And I just did really puffy pants with a microfleece waistband and microfleece at the ankles so they could tuck it into their boots. And that's all I did for that. For kids, just a simple 1-layer cover over fleece pants works great, right? But for adults, I figured I should do a fly, make it a little more nicely fit, I guess, a little more fitted. Just for the appearance. And I tried mine on. They're great. Like, the color's a little, you know, non-typical for snow gear, but I think they look really good. So then I've got this, you know, turned where I can see the curve that I sewed for the fly, and I'm just going to sew down just to the edge here and at the edge at the top around that so that I can then trim it down and turn it. It's just going to be a little turned piece just to be backing on the fly, that's all. And I'm just going to use a wide straight stitch, and hopefully my pull won't gather too much. And if it does, oh well, it's the inside, who will see it anyway. But, you know, I don't want to embarrass myself on stream, right? That would be embarrassing. You guys would understand if I messed up, right? I can't edit when it's on stream. And just go slow around your curve. Then we're just going to trim up the edges there, make it easy to turn. So it's not bulky at the corners. And because I was working with adult sizes, I actually traced with a washable marker when I made my little templates, and I then use scissors to cut because I usually use my cutting mat, but when you're working with, you know, more than a yard in length, that's a little bit cumbersome. I don't have a cutting table or anything like that, so I actually had to sit on the floor and trace it on the carpet and cut it with scissors, which is so strange. Okay, so there's your little back side of your fly, and if you wanted to, you could have sewn or serged up or finished off that edge, but I'm not going to worry about it. For mine, I did. I can show mine again to show how I did it on mine. But my son won't even be in this size for very long, so I'm not worried about it. So if you can see the one that I already did here, you can see that I serged down the side before I then sewed it down. So before I did the cutting, I serged that one piece along the side, but I'm not going to worry about that for his. So then we've got this little piece here, and you can leave it for now, or you can turn it, doesn't really matter. the fly is going to kind of be the last thing we do anyway. So there's your little inside flap. It's the part that's going to be in the inside, not on the outside. The part that's going to be on the outside is right here. And one thing you can do is you can just cut that same piece out, but I was just not paying attention and cut it all the way down. And then you could just fold that piece behind. But for me, I'm just going to do the same thing on this. I'm going to do face to face. And then just turn it, just like I did on the other one. There's a lot of things that if you make mistakes while cutting that you can easily fix. I improvise and make mistakes all the time. It's just about, knowing how to fix them again. And since this is just a backing, it doesn't really matter. Nobody's going to see it. It's just for durability. And then we're going to do the same thing on this one. Just sew around 3 sides. Or really just around 2 on this one because it doesn't even extend out past. So just this and then this. That's it. I am just going to, actually, never mind. I'm not thinking. Just the outside. Never mind me. I'm clearly awake. Totally awake. I didn't stay up too late last night. No, never. What have you guys been up to besides, dealing with snow? The people in my neighborhood, when there's snow predicted, they park on the outside of our street, like about 2 blocks away from my house, because our street is so steep that you can't get cars out of it when it's icy. And they don't plow or salt here or anything like that. So when it's been predicted in the past, if anybody has to go to work, they would just park up there. But since we didn't have to go anywhere, we're all at home. We just haven't gone anywhere for like 3 days. Or 4 days now, I guess. Whatever it is. Who pays attention to time? There's no such thing as time anymore. And I'm not even going to bother backstitching at the bottom there, because it's all going to be sewn together again later. Okay. And then just trim it down on the edge, just like the other one. And I suppose I could make a pattern for something like this, but, I don't know how I would do sizing. It seems complicated. With this, I was able to just trace pants that I liked, right? So there's your little backing piece for the other side. That's all it is. Super simple. And the next thing we're going to do is just switch to our serger, and you can use sewing machine, doesn't matter. And you don't have to do any sort of finishing because pull's not going to run. I'm just going to do the serger because I think it looks more professional on the inside, plus it's a little more, less likely to pop. So if you have a serger, it's a great place to use a serger, but I wouldn't bother doing anything like a zigzag stitch. Just do a straight stitch, or maybe do 2 rows of a straight stitch if you don't have a serger. Because then if one layer pops, it won't pop all the way through. And I'm just going to start at the crotch and work down in case things stretch a little bit. And so it's lined up correctly. And we're just going to sew faces together and down the leg, just like we did with the fleece longies. It's sort of like the general cheat pants method, right? And I'm trying to actually match up my little rows here, so I might move things a little bit. But if you don't have stripes to match up, then you can just be pretty generic with how you hold it. So there's one leg, and then we'll do the same thing with the other. We set that aside. Let me find my stripes. And this one doesn't line up quite as well on the stripes at the top, so I'm going to start a little lower and then trim the top. The way that this pull was on the bolt, it got a little stretched out on one side, so it's not that it wasn't cut evenly, it's that the pull was actually uneven because of the way it was on the bolt. And like I said, you can literally sew this with a straight stitch or with like 2 rows of a straight stitch. It's not on the stretchy side of it anyway, so. Clean up my mess. And so the next thing is going to be just like making longies again. We're going to turn one right side in and leave one inside out. And we're just going to place the right side in one into the inside out one. So just take them, put the seams on the same side, line it up at the top and the bottom. So there's my seam and there's my seam. Make sure it doesn't twist. Pull it inside the other one. And then line up the crotches. And I actually like to go and kind of tie them in a knot just to make sure they don't get pulled apart while I'm pinning. It's just going to get cut off by the serger anyway, or you could cut it off while you sew it. But I just do it to hold it in place. It's a little better than using clips, and it also doesn't go through the pull, so you're not puncturing any holes. I do the same thing when I'm doing circle skirts. Okay. And so now you've got your little crotch pieces lined up, and what I like to do is have one go to the left and one go to the right so that you can put the seams right together. And so when you sew it, they match right up. If you put them both the same direction, you get this big sort of thick spot, and it's harder to sew over it evenly that way. But if you put them one to one side and one to the other side, then it ends up being really easy to hold them together while you're sewing. Does anybody have any questions so far, or are we still doing good? Okay. Now for this part, since I'm going to overlap this part a little bit, I'm going to fold out this extra flap so that when I sew them together, it's out of the way. And then I'm just going to serge it right up to where the flies meet. I'm not going to go beyond. I'm just going to go right up to it. So we can clip that together. And I like to start on that side and then work around and then go up the back side. And I know you can't get a good angle of it, but I'm just going to set the needle in right above, just below where the fly is. Like 1/4 inch below, not right below it, because you can sew back when it's all put together again. But for the serge, just put it just a little below. Make sure it's lining up. There you go. And just go slow and steady. And one thing I do one thing I do when going around the crotch is I do go afterwards with a straight stitch just below, or if you had a cover stitch machine, you might use a more durable, extra stitch there. And that's just in case it pulls too much at the groin, so you don't split and, you know, pop the crotch, especially for something active like snow pants. Or really any kid's pants, I suppose. And so you can see it's just a little bit below. And you can tuck that in, or you can just sew it down. You're going to be sewing over it again, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And you can see how that lines up really nicely right there. And so I like I was saying, I like to go through and go around the crotch with a regular sewing machine to give it a little more hold. And you can do that later, or you can do that now. But it is something that I think you should do. It's probably not something everybody does, but I just know that things tend to split at the crotch, right? So why not? And so I'm just going to go through that again and just a little bit inset for my serge line. And I'm just going to sew another seam just to hold it a little tighter. A little more durability through the middle. So now let's set this piece aside and we're going to do the waistband. And the way that I did my waistband was with my little extra pieces here. And it's going to be sewn together and then serged on to the body, but first these two pieces have to go together. So the wide sides, since I'm going to have the little kind of V at the back, are going to be serged together. And if you had one long strip, you could use that too, but I didn't. I used the pieces that went down the side of the leg so that I didn't have to have any extra fabric. And so I'm just going to serge quickly across, or you could sew. Faces together. I guess I should have cut them opposite to this so that they both had the green on the same side, but I wasn't thinking about it. Next time I'll pay more attention to my stripes when I cut. All this forethought you have to put into things if you want stripes to line up, huh? Wrong machine plug. Okay. It didn't catch my pull super great. Probably need to change those needles out. I'm going to go over it with my machine too. Ah. Klutzy Sewing 101. Okay, now you're going to take the waistbands and line them up. So, put the leg side over the table there. And I'm just going to line them up at the middle of the back. Maybe you can see that there. Probably not. Move this back a little bit. So there's the middle of the back, and then you've got your two pieces here, and which direction your fly is going. So this side's going to be under, and this side's going to be over, which means that this side is going to have the long piece, so that this would line up with that side, and that would line up with that side. So we're going to fold this now with faces outward. Because it's for your waistband piece. You can kind of roughly clip it in place for now, just to hold it in place. And then we're going to set that inside, the long side, toward the side that doesn't have the, the inside flap. And then we're going to work our way around. Just line it up. So again, fit my seams together with it laying one way. So the seams line up. And then I'm going to clip there at the middle. And you can use pins if you want to. I don't think that you're going to have any risk of water getting in right at the waistband. And another thing you could do instead of using pull at the top here is if you have like a lycra, like something that's not going to absorb water and be like super wicking, you could use like a swimsuit lycra, or some sort of a stretch sheer fabric at the waistband. I've definitely seen some like that kind of like yoga pants type material. You can make the waistband out of anything. I just was using the pull because I had the scraps, right? I don't have a lot of athletic type fabrics here. I probably should get some. I mostly just have cotton knits, honestly. And then you're just going to work it around and clip it in place and then sew it at the waist. And so if you wanted to sew this folded back piece here, flat, at this point you could. I'm just going to sort of improvise it, but it's definitely a point when it would be, a good idea probably to get it out of your way, either clip it back or sew it back. But I'm really just going super messy on this. Just like I'm being too lazy to change the needles on my serger, which totally need changing. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing at the end here. I'm only going to sew until about 1 inch before the end. And the reason is because I'm going to then, when I do sew this part of it, I'm going to fold this in to make the waistband to the edge here. And so I need to be able to tuck in that corner. So I'm not going to sew all the way from one edge to the other. I'm going to stop, just short of it. And we'll see if we can make it work. We'll see if my needles even hold up at all. I haven't changed them in a long time, and I do a lot of serging, so this is all on me. I think I'm going to do it this way. Nobody's going to see this. This is going to be inside, so if it's ugly, it doesn't matter. We're going to be tucking it in and top stitching it anyway. I might add a little bit of an extra end to the end of this one of mine. I had it just go right up to the fly, but I might have this one wrap on the inside a little bit more too. I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. I made some like laundry tabs, like how I do on diapers on the other one, so that was kind of fun. I'll show a detail of that when I'm done with this too. And right up to the edge there, but go about 1 inch away from it. Perfect. Okay, so now you got your little waistband. You can flip it up. This part goes beyond to wrap over. And you can tuck it in or sew over it or however you want to deal with your serger tails. This is a big grown-up size sew, so it's taking a little bit of time. It's not as quick as cute little baby sew. But toddler size snow pants, they go fast. Like I really made those ones for my kids, like the day that we were going out. I just sat downstairs for a few minutes and cranked them out. Okay, so if I want to add a little extra tab here at the end, I could do that now. And so what you could do is, just like when you sewed an extension on, you could either sew an extension on by having it flat and then sewing them together and then having it flip over. So like, I'll do it, just for an example. I'll take a little strip of fabric here. And basically I'm going to make kind of like a piece of bias tape. So, it would be on that edge there, but instead you could line this up in the middle with your piece. Just sew it down and then flip it back and then fold that end in and then fold it down across. So I think I'll do that just because it'll be a nice finished edge. But on mine, I didn't do it that way. On mine, I did it where the inside edge just goes, just to the fly. So there's the fly piece, and then I just folded in the edge and just sewed it down. So you can see I went across the edge and then I folded in the back and then I sewed over that part a little bit. But, I'm thinking on this one I might have the piece extend a little further in. Just improvised. You change it however you want to change it. I also did this with like laundry tabs. So the Velcro folds in on itself here, but when it's open, this little piece here attaches to that part to make it tighter. But like when you're washing it, this part here could then just fold onto that to get it out of the way so that you don't have things that are, you know, getting snagged in the wash, just like with diapers. So for mine, it's the best kind of sewist to be. I've got this stuff sitting here. I may as well use it and figure out how to make it work, right? I think that, you know, buying things only for their specific application is so limiting. You can use them for anything. If it looks like it'll work, why not try it? If you've got fabric lying around, give it a go. So I'm just going to sew these pieces together and make myself a little tab at the inside too. And you can always just add things on after the fact. Like you don't need to have, you could even pop stitches if you wanted to go and work with your style, you know, after you've already finished sewing it up entirely. Say, I think this would look better this way, and then do it. Nobody's going to know, even if it's ugly on the inside. Who sees the inside? I sent all my cloth diapers to the lady who, to my friend who was having a baby. It ended up being 3 medium flat rate boxes full of diapers. It was pretty funny. She's like, wow, you sewed a whole stash. I'm like, well, I have no use for them anymore. I'm glad somebody can have a use for them. I have so much pull around here, and I want to keep some around for doing lessons and for giving to people as gifts, but I definitely don't need the amount that I have. Okay, so there's my little folded edge. I can fold in sides. Line it up. And then clip it. And so now I've got this little extra tab beyond the fly that I didn't have on the other one. And then you can just fold in to make it your desired width. Very nice. And then you get a nice little finished looking extra tab on the inside. It almost looks intentional. And then you can go and you can serge it all the way through, or you could just sew it all the way through. And then it goes out beyond instead of stopping right at the end like my other one did. Very fun. I'm going to go right to the seam. And then I'm going to go back. And then you can close up this part, at least along the bottom, but not closing here yet because you haven't done your elastic yet, but you can close up that little bottom seam there. And at the same time, you could do this fly piece. So you could go and top stitch along the fly and then do the edge here, or you could just leave it clipped and do it after you do your elastic. Depends on how many times you want to sew back and forth on it. So we've got our, here, let's turn it right side in. So it's really the last thing at the bottom is just the hem, and I'm pretty sure I don't even need to demonstrate a hem for you guys. You're literally just going to fold it inside and sew it around, so I think that'll be pretty easy. But for this top part here, I've now got my waistband. You can see how it's going to all fit together. This will be on the inside, and then this will go outside it. You'll have a nice flat front. It'll have the Velcro overlapping, and then it'll have the Velcro going to the side. I made my pants the opposite direction as his because I know that with some, I don't know if it's which way you're supposed to do it, but I know that some women's clothes like button on the opposite side as men's, and I don't understand. I think it's because women are supposed to be dressed while men are supposed to dress themselves or something like that, like the tradition of why that is. But I you know, tradition, whatever. I'll do it, I guess. I think it's kind of a funny thing. So here, for the end here, to finish up the waistband, I'm gonna tuck in the edges here. And if you wanted to use your iron at low heat, you could do that with the pull. It won't hurt it. And I'm just gonna tuck in the edges here and then lay them over the top of that and then sew that together when I do my waistband. So fold it together, make it about 1 inch because I'm using 1 inch Velcro. If you wanted to do it thicker, you could do it with, you know, thicker Velcro. Just gonna line it up, make a little strap, a little, you know, securing strap across the front. Sort of like a built-in belt. You don't have to do this though. You could make this just like just a little bit out beyond, like how I did the tab on the other side. You could do them just 2 little tabs like that, and the same thing, just as long as you have some extra securing on the top. You could use hooks, or you could use Velcro. You could make the waistband just exactly end and then just add little extra tabs like that. This is completely however you want to assemble it. It's just, you know, just find a way that works for you. And then when I get to this part here, I'm going to sort of lay it into it rather than over it, and it'll go at a little bit of an angle because this is a raw edge here. And rather than folding it back with my serge, I'm just going to tuck it around and tuck this in. So one way to do that, makes it a little easier, is if you want to notch up just a tiny bit on the back piece. It'll be sewed down above it, so it won't be anywhere exposed. It won't, you know, weaken it at all, especially since pull doesn't run. But you are going to sew down over it, so it won't be loose. And then just sort of pull it straight there and fit it over your top edge. And you could pin it here. It's not somewhere that's going to be a watertight seam issue. I just like to put it somewhere where it's kind of, you know, hidden and clean looking. So it just looks like that. It's just a little bit of an angle. And I'm just going to pin it in place just to hold it for me until I get to that part. There. And then out beyond that, it'll just be clipped. And then at this end, the same kind of thing, we're going to fold in however far you want to. So I can take this one off if I wanted to. I'm just going to fold the edge in and then fold it down, just to clean up the edge. Just make sure it's all tucked in. And just keep it big enough to fit your elastic into it, that's all. I noticed that I'm so much better at pinning and sewing on the floor. I'm not usually somebody who sits in chairs when I sew, like when I prep, like all the pinning and stuff, I always sit on the floor like watching TV. So it's really weird for me to be like reaching up instead of reaching down. There we go. So now our end is all flat. Corners are all nice and square. We've got our nice little finished edge. Okay, so we're just going to sew around that now. I'm going to go up one side of the fly to top stitch it and in, and then I'm going to go around the waistband and top stitch around that waistband to hold it flat, tucking the serger part downward. And then I'm just going to sew with a straight stitch over the top of that all the way around to the other side, and then ending at the end of this piece here. But you could also, at that point, you could go down the crotch first and then do this part separately. It doesn't matter what order you do it in. We're just doing all the crotch area, waistband area top stitching. And that is just to get it out of the way. Yeah, I don't know if anybody does anything the way I do. I don't follow patterns. So I look at it and I've always found that things don't have to be done in the order that everybody else does them in. You can't tell the difference in the final product. So as long as it looks good and it works, why does it matter the way that somebody else did it? I found that a lot of the way I do things is a lot faster because I don't do all these separate steps. But like with things like the envelope pocket opening, or the mail slot pocket opening, I don't do that the way other people do either, but it works. So as long as you can replicate it and it looks the same, then why does it matter if it's not done the same way other people do it? I kind of like that I can kind of piece it all together and then just do one seam and back and forth, backstitch a little bit if you need some more durability, but it doesn't need to be a totally separate seam. Anybody should be confident. Sewing isn't about following a pattern. It's about combining techniques in a way that works for you. So there might be a pattern on how to make a specific item, but you might use all those same techniques in all the other items that you make, or at least a lot of them. And so it's not about the pattern for that item. You don't have to do anything that way. It's about the technique that you learned, and how you're going to apply it to the next thing that you sew. So as long as you are confident with your machine and with trying, whatever technique that you learned, then I think that that's a lot more important. Just in general, I think that's a lot more important. Oops, grabbed at my foot. See, and I'm a klutz too, so it's all sorts of good things. Okay. So now you've got your little fly top stitched. We can add our Velcro over it when we're done. And go to the other side now. Here, let me get this out of the way. I'm not using the serger anymore, so I think I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and I'm just going to start at the base of the fly, which is still not completed because I haven't done the Velcro or top stitching on it yet. But I'm just going to start at the base of the fly here, and then work myself up to the waistband. And remember, you could have done this top stitching earlier too. Again, it doesn't matter what order you do it in. I'm just doing all my stuff on one machine at the same time, basically. Get my top stitching all out of the way at the same time. I'm just pressing it nice and creased there. And I'm going to do down this end again, like I did on the other side, and then I'll do the waistband last. Make sure it's flat. I just kind of liked the idea of having sort of the belt built into the waistband for this one. That's why I did it this way. Just like an extra sort of strap across. But, it doesn't have to be that way. It could just be a short little piece as well. And now I'm just going to fold all this down and start where I've got it pinned there and sew it all the way around. And if you were going to do something like belt loops or something like that instead of elastic, you could just do that now and leave it with this. But I am going to do elastic. And in order to do that, I'm going to sew a casing because this is wider in the middle than at the outside. And so I'm just going to sew a casing for my 1-inch elastic and keep it at the top so that it pulls in at the top so snow doesn't go down your back, you know, so it's a little higher in the middle of the back than other places. And I just thought that that worked really nicely on the one that I did for myself, so I'm going to stick to that method. I liked it. If you find something you like, just stick with it, right? So, you know, I've got my elastic right here. This is just waistband, but it's only 1 inch. If you have thicker that you like to use, you can leave a bigger opening and you can use thicker, but basically, you know, make sure that it's big enough so I can keep it pretty much, you know, full at the edge here, but then as I get in, I'm going to move it up so that it stays even along the top. And I'm going to make a nice little even casing channel so that the elastic doesn't flip and fold. You can also sew it down in the middle of the back if you want it to stay, you know, more in place. Or you can sew it down every so often, like at the hips and at the back. But I just use the guides on my sewing machine. And I'm just going to sew my casing channel and feed it just like I feed, you know, elastic for a scrunchie or whatever. And I'm just going to follow this around. And then for me, I'm just going to sew down my elastic on the edges where the actual like waistband ends, but not extending into the part that has the belt on it. I'm only going to have the elastic around the body of the waistband, if that makes sense. So even though my casing channels go the full direction, I'm not going to run the elastic that full length. So I'm going to feed it in, and then once it gets to that point, sew it down, and then continue the rest of the way. So you'll see. I'll start it on this end. I'm just going to feed it through all the way to the other end to where I want it to go to. Go flip out there. And you can use a safety pin if you don't have a bodkin. When I did this the first time, I think I pre-measured my elastic. And I decided that like the tightest I wanted the waist to be was like 28 inches or something like that. And I cut that ahead of time and then I just like pinned down an end. But I'm just going to do it by feel this time. I didn't pre-measure my son. Okay, so now I've got it right to the edge there. And I'm going to bring it just a little bit past. And just bring my bodkin just past the edge there. And then I'm going to sew up and down right at that edge there to, you know, denote the real end of the waistband. And that'll also hold down the elastic. Sort of where the belt meets the waistband, right? Give it a nice delineated line. And take out your bodkin. And there's the edge of my elastic, but I've got it sewn right down so it's all one line. And then just get your tightness of your waist to whatever you think it should be. And you can measure it or not. You don't want it to be too tight, but you want it to, not be loose on somebody who might be thinner. You can make it fit a lot longer this way. Probably a little bit smaller than that. So I'm going to do mine right about there. And then I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to sew up and down at that line right there. And then I'm going to trim off the excess elastic and close up that hole. I'm just going to pull this elastic out a little bit, trim it off, and then you can close up that hole. And again, there's probably 1,000 ways you could do this. But let's show you what we have so far, huh? All that's left is closing up those little ends and putting on Velcro. So really, and the bottom hem. So that's really pretty simple. So keep in mind that this piece is going to be outside of this piece, and we haven't yet finished off this bottom here. So I clean up my threads and then place things the way you want them to be placed so that everything lines up the way you want it. I tend to do loop on the bottom, hook on the top. So it'll be like loop facing outward, hook facing inward for most of my things that I sew. I kind of want to use a wider piece of loop on this so that it fits Jack longer, but I also don't want to bother. So anyway, measure up the length of this, and then I'm going to cut the angles to match. And round out my corners. And you could totally use my method of glue stick with this if you want to. I do like using my glue sticks. I think my bobbin's almost empty, but we'll see. Line this up. I always feel like I'm hesitant to do adult patterns because I really can't test most sizes. Like, I don't have a lot of sample clothes to look at. I'm sure there's guides around, but I don't have a dress form that fits everything. I can probably do, like I was doing a period panties pattern and I could really only do, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like I can't do other sizes. And for pants like this, I can do like, men's small and medium and, women's maybe 4, 6, 8, 10, maybe 12. Like I would feel so bad if I couldn't put out a pattern for more sizes, and adult size ranges just vary by so much. So I tend to do a lot more things, like take something that you like and, trace it and modify it. I'd rather teach you how to modify something than provide you a full-on PDF pattern that I'm not sure is going to fit, every build, every shape. If that makes sense. So there's the inside piece of loop. And now we can do the hook that's going to go along with it. Like if I was going to do a pattern, I would, provide specific measurements for this, but I just line it up because it's not a pattern. And when you're sewing with hook, go really slow. Be very deliberate with your stitches. Yeah, because when you get bigger, it's not the same pattern. Like people who say just scale it up, that's not how bodies work. Like when I did my baby patterns, if you look at my, newborn small and my medium large diapers, my medium large is nothing like my newborn small in shape. It's not a scaled up pattern, even close. It's completely different shape, different proportions. So when you go up in sizes, like somebody who's tall and thin is just never going to fit the same thing as somebody who might be the same size but a different shape. And so it's almost like I feel like I need to be, or like I would like to be inclusive and fit all builds rather than being like, this might fit you if you're this shape. Like, I want to be able to make something for everybody. So to me, it's a lot more important to have it be something that is a method rather than an actual, pattern. And that way somebody can wear it and learn how to make it themselves without having to rely on a pattern, without having to be the same shape that pattern might have been designed for. And that's what's important to me. Because even two people who are thin, their bodies are still going to be shaped totally differently. So it's not even about being, heavy set or tiny boned or anything like that. Like it's no matter what, you're going to be shaped so differently. You might weigh the same and be the same height as somebody else, and totally different clothes will fit you. And I know that because like I have really big upper arms, and I always have. And I have to wear like an XL in shirts just so that their arms fit over my arms. But nowhere else on me would I ever be matching somebody's size scale to say that I was an extra large. It just isn't that way, right? So yeah, it's personal reasons why I know that patterns just don't fit that way, but also for apparel in general, the sizing is just so inconsistent and so different. Okay, so now that I've got the Velcros fit together, I'm going to place a little piece on the inside here, a little square, and I'm going to sew back and forth and down that crotch and have this little like reinforced piece there right at the base of the crotch. Like after you line up the Velcro to where you want it to be and how you want it to fit. And if you remember, I didn't finish sewing up that all the way to the edge at that back side, and that's why. It's because I like to have sort of a little extra piece there. And you can use pole or something more durable. It's just like a backing piece. And it doesn't even have to be a finished piece, just like a little square would work. Just have something that you set behind it and then sew. And again, you could use pins or you could use glue stick or whatever you want, just to sort of reinforce the base of the fly so that if somebody pulls on it, rips it open too hard or whatever, it's not going to just rip the whole thing. And you could make it pretty. You could have like, a little pretty piece of fabric there if you wanted to, but you don't have to. And so see, it's just like a little patch that I've put at the bottom. And you could totally do something different, but this is what I do at the armpits of my infusion shirts too. I just do like a little piece over the bottom of the zipper. And it's really just keeps it flush. And it just, you can use it to close up those extra seams and make it a little more durable. And I'm sure there are better ways to do it. If you're really good at doing flies and you want to do it like a fancy button fly, then go for it. I'm just doing it like super not going to be seen. Who cares what it looks like? That's this method. I'll call that method. It's not going to be seen. Who cares? Let's just make it durable. And you can do it from the inside or the outside, depending on how much you care about what the seam looks like. And I don't like sewing over pins, even though I know you can, because I just don't want to risk breaking my needles or bending my needles. So I do tend to go slow and pull them out as I go. But you don't have to. I know a lot of people who don't. I'm going to do my hook loop piece here, and I'm going to close up this with it. So I'm just going to cut a square of my hook. That's the hook there, right? It would be hook, loop, yep. So I'm taking a square of my hook, or rectangle, whatever. And I like to round my corners just a little bit, but you don't have to. So if I'm going to keep doing a couple videos a week and keep coming up with material in order to keep a channel going, I obviously am going to have to get in to a lot more apparel type stuff. And I can obviously, make patterns for what I'm doing. But I really am curious what people would be interested in seeing to go on for that long. Because I can do, kitchen week every so often and do different small things for kitchens and different small things for bathrooms. But apparel is really the only thing that's gonna, that's awesome. Apparel is really the only thing that you can just continue to keep doing different things. But since my point is kind of to do more the techniques and less the specific patterns, I kind of wonder where I can go with the channel, where can I continue to do something that people are going to want to see, but besides just using the same techniques over and over again. I mean, obviously I can repeat techniques depending on what they're being used for. But I really want my audience to be more about learning how to do it and less about doing that specific project. And I do want to keep doing material. I don't want to be one of those channels that after 3 months just stops uploading. That's, it's not even about getting 1,000 subs in 4,000 hours or whatever, which is never going to happen. But it's more about, having something that's interesting and useful for people. And obviously I can do more than sewing as well. We can do hats, gloves, we could do painting, we could do sculpture, we can do drawing technique. I actually do have a formal education in that, so make is way more than just clothes. I just started off with sewing because it's winter and it's just the easiest thing to do in my basement. And because people wanted me to do the diaper stuff, because that's a really old blog and people wanted to see videos for it for a long time. Like maybe once I have a few more months worth of stuff, I'll put up a Discord and people can just put up their own requests. Like that would be a way to keep things going. So for this part, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to close it up with my sewing on my Velcro. The end of my little belt piece. Okay, so hopefully you guys get the idea. I'm just gonna add a loop bit here for laundry tab, and then I'm gonna add the loop bit here for closure, and then we're just gonna hem up the bottom of the pants. And that's as simple as folding it in and then sewing around. I usually do it inside out so that I have a nice line on the inside rather than the outside. And just line it up with my stripes so it looks nice and even. But first I have to make sure that they're the right length for my son. So hopefully that's good. I do sew-alongs every Wednesday from 2 to 4 Pacific time. Sometimes it's with the theme of whatever I've been sewing, and sometimes it's just like today where I was doing this and I could have done a video on something else, but I figured I had to do this anyway, so I figured we'd do this because it was pertinent to the situation. But I would take suggestions. Sometimes people just want me to work them through specific other things. So if you had something you wanted to see me do, you can sort of interrupt and say, can we take a break and do this? I'm really curious how this works. Or I was having problems with this thing that you showed. Can you give more detail? And I'm happy to do that. So this can be kind of a time where we troubleshoot your own projects, or where we just do something together. Or you guys can, give comments in videos that you want to see something done, and I can do that during a live stream if you show up. So it's more of just a time to sort of sew on air and take feedback and get suggestions, or just sit here and sew if nobody shows up. That's really all it is. So yeah, let me know. Let me know for next week. Wednesday's the day I can do, because Wednesday afternoons my kids don't have school. They do like a short day on Wednesdays, so they don't tend to need me at this time slot, and then it's early enough that I can still make dinner, get any errands I need done. So that's why I chose Wednesdays. So hopefully it's a decently convenient day for everybody else, but if not, they're always here and recording. And also I am happy to do videos by request for tutorials as well. They just tend to be, shorter and have parts fast forwarded and stuff. So it's not the same. It's probably better, but this is just an opportunity to answer questions and do things more interactively. I was thinking about doing Twitch or something like that, but I just can't imagine somebody would want to watch me sew for like 2 hours at a time on Twitch. That'd be pretty funny. Because if I did Twitch, I could do all my video tutorials on Twitch and then take the VODs and edit them down to be the fast-forwarded YouTube videos, like a lot of people do. And it's an interesting idea, but I'm not really sure how I would do it yet. So that's just the ideas. Anyway, I'll finish this up. You guys work on whatever you want to work on, and I'll see you next week. Happy sewing.